to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, The Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops.
And Omari Sanko for the second, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And of course, we're always blessed to be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport. If you are not listening to Wes and Blake Silverman over on the Pin Down on the Detroit Bad Boys YouTube channel, you absolutely should be, along with taking in all of the other Pistons content creators, tons of great Pistons podcasts and websites and all of that out there for Pistons fans. Make sure you're checking all of those out, but make sure you are definitely subscribed to the Detroit Free Press, where Omari Sanko II puts out all of his work, and the very free Motor City Hoops Substack, where I have game notes and analysis after every game. And I will plan on doing some video breakdowns from Summer League once I get back from football camp over the next few days. So my plan is that we're actually going to get through all of Summer League 02, and then I'll go back and do some video breakdowns of Ebuka, Okorie, Chaz, Lanier, Ugonna, and Yenso, anybody else that maybe the fan base would like to see a video breakdown on. But we are both not in Las Vegas anymore. It's always fun, Omari, to spend some time together. We took in a dinner, as we talked about on the last episode. We got to record in person for like the fourth year in a row, something like that, which is always a cool tradition. We were talking about it. There's just a different dynamic when you're in the same room as the person you're recording with. But we are both now home. I came home on Sunday. Even though my travel is much longer in terms of a flight and then a drive, your travel sounded miserable. So let everybody know why they should appreciate you're even here with us right now recording.
No, for sure. Stembo Clock said, bring back the shades, Omari. I actually thought about wearing them and just keeping the bit going. But I actually think my eyes need a break from them because I did not take them off in Vegas the whole 5 days I was there. Yeah, like your travel's weird, Bryce, because you have like a long drive from Denver back to Kansas. But I had like initially a 6 a.m. flight scheduled out of Vegas yesterday. And I pushed that back to 11 p.m. because one, the schedule came out and the Pistons played at 1 p.m. Pacific time. And then two, that was the only flight available after 3 p.m. And the 3 p.m. was obviously too early because they played at 1. So checked out of the hotel at noon. It's kind of scary being like without a hotel in Vegas for an extended period of time. It was like 12 hours where I basically was just like, I had no bed to lay my head on. It's like, what if something happens? Like, obviously I just go to the hotel and get a room for the night. But that kind of goes through your head when you're sick of being in Vegas. It's been 112 every single day. But I ended up grabbing late dinner with Cody from the Detroit News and Rod Beard, former Detroit News writer who's now down with the AJC. I just sat in the hotel and just played games for a bit. And my flight kept getting pushed back. So eventually it was like 1 p.m. So I'm like, I'll just leave the hotel lobby at 10 or whatever. Get there at 10:30. Thankfully, no more delays. But if you've ever taken West Coast red eye back to the East Coast, that it's just weird in general. Leave at 4 a.m. Eastern, roughly get back at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. Kind of intermittently slept, but it's obviously, and then I took a long nap and woke up, but it's like 6 p.m. So I've been up maybe like 4 hours. So I think I'm normal, but you kind of don't know until the next day because then you kind of randomly wake up at 3:30 a.m. and it's like, yeah, this is going to take a while to unwind. But no, I mean, great time in Vegas. Obviously, we got together with our guy Laz, the first day. Me and Laz actually run that same flight, which is hilarious, along with some other Pistons people. And we went to Lotus of Seum with the other Pistons guys, which we do. That's probably the third year in a row we've done that. Awesome Thai spot. I know you were at the gym. Basically the entire time you were there, as you are. It's kind of back and forth, but always a great time. And then, of course, the Pistons, I don't think this is their best summer league team. They're 1-2 right now, but a lot of good stuff on the floor as well that I do think will carry over into next season at some capacity.
So Adam says, Bryce, don't you mean supper? Yes, I'm trying to get rid of that. I was overly aggressive with the supper.
Don't get rid of it. No.
I did have 3 really good suppers while I was in Vegas. Obviously, Lotus of Seum. Randy looked that up the other day. I went to a steakhouse in Henderson. I actually hadn't, in my years in Vegas, I'd never really branched outside of Vegas. And so this was like a 20-minute drive into Henderson. And then there was a steakhouse. And usually I'm not a big fan of steakhouses because like what my wife grills on the grill here at the house is as good as any steak I can get anywhere. But I will admit that was a very good steak there. And then ate at, I think it was, is it Carmine's? That is in Caesars?
The Italian spot?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Like, so you're like the third person that I know that
next year, O2. Next year.
It's really that good.
It's good, and it's family style. I don't know. I kind of like family style for whatever reason. Take some of the pressure off ordering, I guess, for me. But yeah, it was good. So we need to, as you mentioned, me, you, and Laz got together for lunch after we recorded the episode that was live. We went to a really nice burger spot. I thought it was quite good. But yeah, we need to check out Carmine's next year. It was good.
Yeah, that's crazy. You are the third person to say that in the last 2 days. Like, Carmine's is amazing. Like, I know somebody that had a reservation for like several months because they just were that excited for it. Yeah, that sounds perfect.
And also, thank you. Downtown Deuce says, hit the like button. Mr. Ray says, hit the like button. Make your way in, fine folks. Hope you all are well. Hope Bryce got that annual meal in Vegas on O2's dime, or maybe it goes back and forth. We will leave who picked up the tab. We were there with a bunch of other people. So
yeah, all I know is that when I picked up that tab last year, it was like, why did I just pay $30 for 3 tacos? That is like, we're going off strip, regardless of who picks up the tab. We're going off strip next time.
Yeah. I you know what's funny? I don't think I stepped a single foot on the strip for my entire trip. Now,
that's actually great.
Our burger spot was in Planet Hollywood, but I literally just walked across the street from your hotel off the strip to the side entrance of Planet Hollywood, ate, and walked back out. And then obviously at Caesars, I had to go into the Forum shops or something like that, I think is what it was kind of located in. But like, I didn't step foot on the actual street of the strip. I mean, I stayed at the Virgin Hotel off the strip, close to Thomas and Mack, and I was perfectly happy with that setup.
I'm happy for you. I've said this before. I've said this on the pod. The Vegas Strip is basically a giant Chuck E. Cheese for adults. And the longer you're there, the more you realize the bright lights and everything else is just that, right? It's just a bunch of flashy stuff to hold your attention long enough for you to spend money. And like, I'm not a gambler. I have not, I may have put $30 on blackjack like 4 years ago. I have not put any gambling money at all on any table in 3 years.
I put 50 on roulette with you as we walked out of the Cosmopolitan one night and immediately lost that $50, and I don't think I've gambled since.
Yeah, I just hate losing money too much. It's literally a rigged game against you. I just don't understand why I would participate monetarily in a system that's not set up for you to succeed. But I'm not going to get too philosophical here. But I'm happy you avoided the strip. Every time I'm there, I'm like, I should explore more of Vegas. Even old Vegas is cool, and just get away from the Chuck E. Cheese environment.
I love when my wife, Ranny, goes with me. I think she can hear me right now, so I definitely have to say this. No, I truly love when my wife goes with me. And so I'm already stressing that next year I will have to stay at a hotel on the strip because she will be going with me, and Ranny does Vegas things while I'm there doing basketball
She
things.
has a great time at Vegas. Just for the time I hang with you guys, I'm like, she knows how to do Vegas, man. She sets the standard.
Yeah, she'll bring a friend and they will hang out. And the only time we see each other is first thing in the morning and in the evening. Downtown Deuce asked if either of us ate at Yardbird. I don't know that I'm familiar. So I have not.
Yardbird, they have a couple locations. I've been to a Yardbird, not in Vegas, maybe in DC, but there's like a few of them. Because obviously every restaurant that has at least 3 locations in any city has an outpost in Vegas. But Yardbird is great. I like Yardbird a lot. If you've ever been to like a Tom's Watch Bar, it's pretty similar, but I actually think Yardbird has better food.
So George says, greetings from Greece. I'm so sorry, George. I'm not going to try to say this city because I will not do a good job, and I apologize. I would wish I could, but said they are representing the 313 over in Greece. So I love that. Thank you so much. Okay, I want to ask that we're already into it here. Sorry if you came for Pistons talk. We will get into it. We will talk Ebuka, Okorie. We're going to break down the roster a little bit as it stands. I see Supergirl questions in the have you seen this movie? You haven't seen it yet. Okay.
I used to be on top of every single superhero movie. Something in the last 3 years just kind of lost me. There's still some stuff I love, but I've not seen Supergirl. I heard it wasn't that good, unfortunately.
Okay, let's talk NBA Summer League. I actually want to start with Chaz Lanier. I think the Ebuka Okorie conversation is a bigger conversation and something we can really get into the nuances of. And yes, YouTube user, what time is it in Greece? Please let us know, George. What have you thought about Chaz Lanier? So I'm going to give the stats for Lanier. This is according to Real GM, which is a little bit different than the Synergy numbers. probably has to do with the free throw stuff where it's the 1 for 2, 1 for 3. By the way, do you like that? What are your thoughts on the summer league free throw, not shooting both free throws or all 3 free throws? Your thoughts?
I like it solely for summer league. It does really speed up the pace of the game and, just kind of boost things along. And it's funny. They had like a flagrant review in the last game, and literally that was the quickest flagrant review ever. So there was a very clear focus on we need every game wrapped up in like 2 hours. So I liked it for that. You should not have a flagrant foul.
1:03 a.m. George is staying up late. He's doing what you did recently here, O2.
Yeah, no, shout out George. But then there's the one game where a dude got fouled on a flagrant 3, just like a closeout foul, and it's like you take one free throw, get 3 points to get the ball back, and it's like for that sole reason it should not be in the NBA. I like it for summer league, but that's just too powerful for the NBA. Like I'm like you're just gonna have guys kicking their feet out way more because why wouldn't you?
Yeah. So I agree with you. I like it for summer league. If somebody who watches some G League games, I'm fine with it for the G League. Do not like it for the NBA regular season. And I made this point. There's no way you put that into the NBA playoffs, O2. And the NBA regular season is already so different than the NBA playoffs, just in the way the game is officiated and played. I don't think we need rules that are going to differentiate the regular season from the playoffs as well. So I'm cool with it for summer league. I do not like it for potential regular season or whatever. Chaz Lanier playing 31 minutes per game, averaging 20 points on 51, 53. 100% hasn't missed a free throw yet. Couple rebounds, couple assists. I think the big thing here, O2, is he is 53% from the 3-point line. I want to get the totals here. So he is 16 of 30 right now in 3 games from the 3-point line. Obviously knocking down shots at a very, very good rate.
And I think he was 1 for 6 for the first game, but then he went like 15 for 24 over the next 2. So, yeah.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts? Obviously, he's making shots. That is huge. That is a huge value add to any NBA team, and something we've seen the Pistons really prioritize in Trajan Langdon's tenure as the decision maker for the Pistons. Is this enough for you to think that, like, hey, I think we both thought he was going to be on the roster. Is it any more than that? Do you think he's like sneaking into the rotation? We'll talk more about where this roster stands in a little bit. I guess, what are your takeaways? Like, what does this mean, I guess, for Chaz Lanier?
Yeah, I think the main thing with Chaz is the entire sell was he was an elite shooter in college, elite shooter his last year at Tennessee when he made the jump, to Power 5. And that's the reason why he went 37. That's the reason why some people gave him a first round grade. It's just that he could really, really shoot the ball. And that's the one thing you want to see is, can he really, really shoot the ball? And yeah, in game 2, he hit, I think, his first 4 3-pointers. He was 5 for 6 in the first few minutes, scored 17 of their first 20 points. And we saw just a little bit of that microwave ability when he played last season, but obviously he didn't play a lot. But for him to do that and then just stay on fire the next game. So he went 7 for 12 in game 2, 8 for 12 in game 3. And he's hitting every type of 3. Like, he's hitting 3s with no space at all. At the buzzer, he's hitting step backs. He's coming off of pin downs. He's just finding open gaps in transition, or just like kind of finding those pockets, right? And it's the off.
O2, can I give you the numbers real quick?
Sure,
Let me give you the numbers to back up your point, and then I promise I'll let you keep going. Spot ups, 6 of 9 from 3. Off screens, 4 of 7 from 3. Transition, 4 of 6 from 3. Handoffs, 1 of 2. Isolation, 1 of 2. The only play type, pick and roll ball handler, he's 0 of 3, essentially. But to your point, in a very small sample, we've seen him make multiple 3s in all of those other play types.
Yeah, and we talked to him after their practice on, I believe it was Friday, and they had only played 1 game. Like, he went 1 for 6, and it wasn't like a great game for him. I think he still had 14 points. But just talking to him about his offseason, what he learned from last season and whatnot, and he just mentioned movement, shooting, and defense being really big focuses for him. And then he proceeds to knock down 15 of 24 or whatever it was during those next 2 games. But that's just it for him. If he could shoot 3s at that elite of a level, there's just always going to be a need for that type of guy, especially a real microwave shooter, like somebody who could just come in and really swing a game. And like you said, we'll talk about the depth chart aspect of it later. And they are in a position this year to where they're is a little bit of overlap, as far as finding exactly what he does at his position. But that was the baseline test, I think, in Summer League, is can he do that? And he passed that test.
at the risk of overreacting to Summer League, I guess, I think coming into the offseason, even after just 1 year, I'd kind of like, man, I don't even know if Lanier is a 15-man. Like he's talented enough to be in the NBA, right? Like he's a NBA basketball player, but it's like, do you even feel great if he's your 12th man, right? If he's the guy that's gonna get into the rotation whenever Isaiah Joe misses a game or whatever. This has been a reminder, I guess, for me, that potential is still there. I don't know that it's moved me in a way that's like, hey, just trade Duncan Robinson, Chaz Lanier is the answer or something like that. I think what it has done for me is say, or at least remind me, there is a young player on this roster, a second-year player on this roster that if Duncan Robinson or Isaiah Joe, or if you think Taurean Prince is going to be in the 10-man rotation, if those guys miss a game, here's a player that can step in and fulfill that role. Or if there, as we'll talk about later, there is a big move to be made that consolidates multiple contracts, and now he needs to be the 11th man, or maybe even the 10th man, maybe that potential is still there in regards to providing some floor spacing. I don't think I would feel comfortable with him in the 10-man rotation going into the season, but it was a good reminder of what he could potentially provide. Pistons fan 11 says, can Chaz create anything when they close out on him? I think this is one thing that Pistons fans, myself included in this, I think watching Duncan Robinson last year made me really realize how to evaluate and analyze this archetype of player. Because Duncan Robinson does a great job attacking closeouts, and a lot of times it's then to collapse the defense, and then we see him making nice passes. And so more and more with the Duncan Robinsons, the Isaiah Joes, the Chaz Laniers, can you attack the closeout and get something positive when they take away that catch and shoot three-point attempt? I'm not sure this has been answered for me during Summer League. It's a great question, and probably is ultimately the question that determines whether or not he becomes a rotation player for the Pistons.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And if you just look at his role purely, he probably just on paper is worse than what Marcus Sasser was last season, where maybe you don't get in every night, but you know if you have injuries or anything else, he could come in and he could just really come and get you a bucket. But I think that's a big question for him, as you said, is what can you do if the shots stop falling and you just got to have to weaponize it in other ways? Duncan's really good at stepping inside and getting the floater off and just a pretty good finisher for a three-point shooter. He could make that second read. I haven't watched Isaiah Joe as much. I know he could see the floor pretty well, and he could do a little bit of that as well. I don't think we saw that from Chaz, and that's probably the difference, is that if his shot's not falling, is he still credible enough in other ways offensively to continue to make an impact? So I think that may be TBD. But again, obviously, if it's just him taking shots and knocking them down, he did that at an elite level in Vegas.
I will finish off with these numbers from Synergy. He was 12 of 23 on catch and shoot three-point attempts, which is 52%, 8 of 17 on guarded catch and shoot threes. So almost 50% on his guarded catch and shoot three-point attempts, was 4 of 6 then on unguarded, 4 of 7 on dribbled three-pointers. Obviously didn't get to the rim a whole lot or anything like that, but really, really big time shot making. I assume we'll see him throughout the rest of Summer League. So an opportunity, because I don't know how much scouting goes into Summer League games, but whoever they play moving forward should know that he is a high level shot maker from the 3-point line. Would love to see teams aggressively get to closeouts on him so we can see that ability to attack a closeout, either get to a floater, pull up jumper, whatever it may be. All right, let's go to our first break here. When we come back, we probably do need to go ahead and talk about the first round pick, Ebuka Okorie.
All right, we're back with segment 2. We're going to talk about their first round pick, Ebuka Okorie. Just kind of, browsing Twitter over the weekend. I've seen a wide variety of takeaways. And I think a lot of it is you could focus on the actual output and, percentages, or you could just break down more so what is he doing that could really help him at the next level. And, I think if you fall in the latter category, there's a lot to like, right? Just not how fast he is, but how he shifts gears, the willingness to play make and make some of those reads, the feistiness on defense. I did come away from it seeing some of what made Dennis Schroeder, I thought a really effective point guard for this team. I'm curious where you fall on Okorie as a whole, because regardless of the statistics, I did feel like he showed how wide his toolkit is as far as how he could impact the game.
So let me give the numbers first, Omari, and then we can go from there. So again, this is real GM's numbers. These may be different in different places, so bear with me, but 16 points per game on 35% from the field, 17% from three, 78% from the free throw line, a little over 3 rebounds, just under 5 assists, over 3 steals, and under 3 turnovers. Just some synergy numbers here. The 3-point shooting, 2 of 12 on let me backtrack there. 0 of 5 on catch and shoot 3-point attempts. I want to come back to that a little bit later. 2 of 7 on dribbled 3-pointers, 1 of 6 on what they tagged as runners, and then 14 of 29 at the rim. I do think that 29 rim attempts in 3 games should in and of itself be an impressive number. I know what people are going to, scream at us in terms of the inefficiency in terms of scoring at the rim. I get it, and we're going to talk about it. But I have yet to watch a game of these 3, Omari, and then even going back and evaluating him in the pre-draft process and not come away saying, this guy gets to the rim anytime he wants. And so I want to start there because, yes, the finishing is going to have to improve. We talked about that when he got drafted.
We talked about that before the draft.
Yes, as creative as he is with his finishing and all the versatility he shows, the numbers weren't great coming out of college. And we're seeing that in Summer League. But he does get to the rim. He pressures the paint over and over. He does it using ball screens. He does it in isolation. So, I do like seeing that a jump in levels from college to NBA Summer League, I guess theoretically, I think most people would probably agree with that, is he's still getting to the rim pretty much anytime he wants.
Yeah, I mean, that's the main thing is that, like you said, he is a walking paint touch. He can engineer a drive to the rim seemingly whenever he wants. He has to do it in the NBA, obviously, but he did it all throughout college. He did it in Summer League. It's not just his first step and how quick he is, but just how he shifts gears, his footwork, his hesitations. He's just got a lot of stuff in his bag that, just allows him to get to the rim. And it's a pretty unique toolkit he has. And I thought one thing that stood out whenever we talked to, their Summer League head coach, Steve Scalzi, he's an assistant coach and does player development during the season. He's been there 3 years. He talked about just how a paint touch in and of itself is a form of offense because of everything it can open up for you offensively. And he didn't say this per se, but I think the overarching, message and what they're focusing on with Okorie is when you get to the rim, that's generating something. It's generating a layup. It's generating a potential offensive rebound. It may get you an open 3. He gets you a trip to the line. You could always get something from it. And people will debate, well, you could have got, bigger guard next to Cade or, this or that. There are some guys who went after Cameron Carr and Allen Graves who have played pretty well in Summer League. But just that isolation ability could take so much pressure off of Cade, I think long-term and make things easier for him because he could do it whenever he wants. And, again, you get to the percentages and whatnot, but kind of like how Chaz showed that he could really shoot it. Yeah, Okorie showed that he could get to the paint. He has a lot of ways to do it. And it seems like something that'll be sustainable for him at the next level as well.
So the one thing let's stay positive, and then I have 2 kind of reservations with Okorie. I'll get into my reservations after we stay positive. I more and more understand why they liked Okorie because I think what he does do positively defensively is something that they value at a very high level. I still don't think Okorie is going to be a solid, fundamental defender, especially early in his career. What I do think Okorie is going to do is disrupt offenses with active hands, passing. I understand what Trajan in the front office saw in him defensively because he is going to be disruptive. He plays for steals. I think sometimes he plays himself out of good position to get those steals, but this team is very much, I think, prioritizing. You've given the stat, O2, from if you go to NBA.com player stats and filter by per 100, don't they have 4 of the top 15 players in steals per 100 possessions or something like that?
I think they had 4 of the top 10 or 11. They had Javante, Ron, Asar, and Paul Reed. I think they were all top 10 or top 11.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, we'll get into this later, but I think that's their comfortability with Paul Reed over Isaiah Stewart in this, in what they decided this offseason was Paul Reed is going to be disruptive. He's not the rim protector Isaiah Stewart was or is in general, but he is disruptive. Okorie is going to do that. There are, limiting factors in terms of offensive players being able to just score over him. I'm trying to think which game it was, but I made a note that somebody was just able to dribble him to the block, jump over him, and score the basket, and like those things are going to happen. But I do think he is going to get steals, get deflections, and then that's going to lead straight to transition. We saw it in every single game of Summer League, his ability to do that defensively.
Yeah, and that's big because defense is just going to manifest differently for every guy. And he has a big wingspan. It's like a 6'8" wingspan, and that helps him a lot. I think that gives you a lot more confidence that at least at the point guard position. And for a lot of guys who are going to be at the quote unquote 2, he will be able to just maybe not just get completely bullied, but a player who's on the smaller side, like you're always going to be giving something up, unless he just bulks up significantly or, there are ways that he could get there. But his hands are extremely quick. You see it just the way he handles the ball, because he really keeps the ball on a string no matter what speed he's going at. But it manifests offensively as well, where he can just kind of get up in guys and just kind of poke the ball away. It's not just him, in passing lanes. Like he's just getting up into you and, he's going to do everything he can to try to knock it away. So that does add to what they do already. I think that there is a chaos aspect, that they want to generate. They want to be really good at transition and, they want to capitalize on that. And he does. He just as a ball handler, obviously, but also with his hands, he fits into that as well.
Okay, I want to address some of my questions at least. So Steven says a lot of fans are saying he can be Robin on day one. Do you think that's overstating it for a rookie, or do you think he'll be like Dylan Harper? My quick answer to the Dylan Harper is better than him defensively. And Dylan
Way
Harper, he's way bigger and stronger, which helps him defensively for one. Dylan Harper also was a better finisher in his rookie year than what I think Okorie is going to be. So no, I don't think he's Dylan Harper as a rookie. And then Pistons fan 11 says, I want to ask Bryce if his reservations about Okorie pick and his fit with Cade are lessened at all now. So I'm going to answer both sides of this. My reservations about the pick in general have lessons. Like I see the vision. I understand why Trajan Langdon in the front office valued him and all of that. I still do not think he fits great with Cade Cunningham. I don't think anything we've seen in Summer League, Omari, I think what I've seen in Summer League actually amplifies that even more. So again, that's my eye test watching him play. The synergy numbers, his number one used play type is pick and roll ball handler. Then it's transition, which you can play with Cade in transition. He has 9 total spot up possessions in Summer League and hasn't hit a single catch and shoot 3-pointer. This isn't me trying to knock a rookie in his first few Summer League games. All I'm saying is there was nothing in the pre-draft evaluation and there's nothing I've seen through 3 Summer League games. So this is all the data I have that says that Ebuka Okorie is going to be a really, really good off-the-ball offensive player. Now, if you want to argue with me that Cade Cunningham was just going to go play off the ball and Ebuka Okorie is going to be the primary creator and all of that, I will listen to that. I just don't think Ebuka Okorie is good enough right now to take Cade Cunningham off the ball to that extent. So I am still more so Danish Jenkins or Duncan Robinson or Isaiah Joe would start next to Cade Cunningham. I still don't fully see the heavy minutes of an Ebuka Okorie, Cade Cunningham backcourt. That's where I'm at still.
Yeah, and that's the biggest question going into next season is how they handle Ebuka, because I do think he's going to play. They've made a point to develop their guys and get them time on the floor, and I don't think that's going to stop, especially with the investment, that they made to go get him. But that's a big question. How does he fit with Cade? And does he have what is his value on offense when he doesn't have the ball? Because last season, his long season in college, he was just their on-ball guy. He did everything. He was their main engine. He never played off ball because there was absolutely no reason for him to. It's not a knock on him. It's just the reality of his situation. There's no reason. There's no reason for anybody else to have the ball except him when he was on the floor. With that team. Can he not go catch and shoot threes? Can he find pockets? And if Okorie and Cade are playing together, where does that put Okorie when the ball's in Cade's hands? Because obviously the ball's going to be in Cade's hands. So it's not, the minutes, I'm sure it won't purely overlap. Okorie more than likely comes off the bench, right? He's going to have, stints where he is their main creator. And, I think part of the idea behind the pick is that you could have 48 minutes of at least one ball handler on the floor that could really strike fear into a defense, which I don't think they truly have had with any consistency since they drafted Cade. So Okorie does give you that. You still need that on-ball creator archetype on this roster with Cade.
Agreed.
But how does he fit with Cade? And that's obviously a big part of the puzzle as well.
I'm not saying they don't play minutes together. Like, there are definitely stretches of a game. I mean, one thing I've really pitched is I think something that was special about Jalen Brunson that goes underappreciated is how much he played off the ball this season, and especially in the playoffs. So I am team Cade Cunningham should play more off the ball. But, Pistons fan 11 says, aren't we taking Cade off ball because Cade is a better shooter? Rest Cade to not handle, create all the time. Yes, but not for large portions of a game because Cade is too special on the ball. You don't take somebody as, in my opinion, everybody has their own opinion, and I'll listen to it, and I respect it. In my opinion, you don't take somebody as special as Cade completely off the ball in the way you would to have to give Ebuka Okorie the ball for large stretches of time. Obviously, they're going to play together. Michael says, if Okorie ultimately ends up 6-man, I think that would still be seen as a win at pick 17. Agreed 100%. This is where I kind of had to change my mindset from draft night in that if he ends up being the third guard in a rotation of Cade Cunningham, whoever the long-term off-ball guard is, and Ebuka Okorie, that's great. That's incredible. And, Steven says, but Okorie is Cade's backup, ? Yes, of course. Like, for me, if you ask me for my 10-man, 2-deep rotation, Ebuka Okorie would be the backup point guard. Like, that's who I would have as the backup point guard. So yes, I think he absolutely should be in the rotation. It's a good question. Fly Monk 321. How many minutes does Ebuka even get this year? He has to beat out Danis for minutes. We'll get into that a little bit more later whenever we talk about where the roster's at. I think that was my two things with him, kind of my question. Anything else you have on Ebuka? And then we can give some other summer league thoughts, and then let's look at where the roster sits right now.
Yeah, no, I think we're pretty much good on Ebuka. Let's go ahead and talk about the other guy that they drafted this year briefly, Onyenso. I thought he had some moments, but overall, what's been your takeaway just through 3 games?
So was it the second game where the rim protection was ridiculous? Is that right?
5 blocks, yeah.
Yeah, and it was like he altered a bunch of other shots. Like, that was the game where you saw the vision, right? You saw the disruption and all. And again, this front office continues to show us what they value, especially in, like, Cade is the superstar. And honestly, he's pretty disruptive for a superstar. Duncan Robinson, Isaiah Joe, Taurean Prince, those guys have a very specific skill set in terms of spacing the floor. I think you've seen with a lot of these other players, Asar, not that the front office acquired all of them, but Asar, Ron, Danis, Paul Reed, Ebuka Okorie, Onyenso, on different levels there from all of those guys and different levels of investment, but they look for defensive disruption in some way. Like, to me, that we see the front office. I assume JB, shout out JB for being named an assistant coach on Team USA as well. Shout out to JB for that. So we see the front office really valuing players that can be disruptive on the defensive end. I think this is a real long-term play with Onyenso. But that game was really interesting.
Yeah, I think you saw it right there. He was one of the best rim protectors in college. He was like 2.1 blocks, through 15 minutes through his 4-year career. He averaged almost 3 last year. Like, that's his archetype, rim runner, shot blocker. Maybe that's what we didn't see as much was like sort of the rim rolling and where he fits in offensively, whether that's a putback guy or whatnot. I thought he looked a lot better on defense and offense. And that's not surprising. I think you expected that, based on his profile coming out of college. But yeah, that game too showed the long-term vision for him and what you want him to be. Every team, he compared himself to Derek Lively. You could, throw out, Daniel Gafford, like a Clint Capella. Every team needs those guys. It seemed like it took him a bit to adjust to the speed of things. And outside of that game too, you didn't see that same level of consistency in games 1 and 3. But they have at least one more summer league game left. Obviously tomorrow, I expect he'll get more opportunity. And as he gets more reps, you hope to see that rim protection time and get stronger and stronger as time goes on.
Just some other names. Obviously, Isaac Jones is putting up really good numbers. We kind of talked about him, he's just so physical for, summer league basketball. He's so aggressive, but he has been very productive. Bryce Williams had the big game 2 when, him and Chaz Lanier both got it going. Williams struggled pretty mightily in game 3. We did not see Roddy Gale in game 3. He's probably the player I'm most interested to watch here if we can get a couple games from him moving forward. Any other names you want to discuss before we get into the wider Pistons roster and rotation?
Yeah, Roddy Gale, I thought he stood out. He only played 2 games. He didn't play game 3 because of some soreness, they said. But he did miss a shot in the minutes he played. I think in 30 total minutes through games 1 and 2, he went 8 for 8 overall, 4 for 4 from 3. And his profile at Michigan was, sort of a big, burly forward, could give you something defensively, completely smaller guards, get inside. And he almost predominantly scored inside because he was only a 30 or 31% three-point shooter. So, 4 3-pointers isn't a big sample size, but that was the question with him, I think, coming out of college, and he knocked him down. So of all the guys on the roster, I thought he was one of the ones that stood out more, or has been one of the ones to stand out more.
Okay, we actually do have a couple. Let's get to these so then we can close the book on Summer League. And so Steven says, do raw numbers even matter during Summer League? Maybe you can address your own perception watching the games. I'm sure it's going to get posted at some point. I wish I had it bookmarked or saved or something. I remember last year somebody put out where they had tracked Summer League kind of just raw box score numbers versus what a player did in their rookie season. And I think 3-point percentage was the lowest correlation between those two things. And so to the question, they matter, but there is some variance when you're talking this small of a sample size. So I think that's why with Okorie, it's more, hey, he's getting to the rim almost 10 times a game. And you see the defensive disruption. I do think more than ever, and this is not an eye test versus analytics thing. I'm not trying to turn this into this argument, but it really is a thing where you have to watch the games to see. Like, have you watched the Caleb Wilson versus Cam Boozer game yet? Did you watch that?
No, I haven't seen that one yet.
So Caleb Wilson was incredible. Like, I want to be very clear. Caleb Wilson was incredible. But my big takeaway was, yeah, if he makes those type of contested shots an entire career, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. But he took some pretty bad shots. He had some bad turnovers, like stuff like that. I'm not trying, it was an incredible performance. I want to be fair here. But I do think even more so in these Summer League contexts, you have to watch the game, which plays into, it's Breezy B says, Bryce, how do you feel about Okorie versus Malik Thomas? So Malik Thomas putting up big numbers right now. If you watch the games, you know how Malik Thomas is getting a lot of his buckets? On the ball. They're just putting the ball in his hands and saying, go score, go be aggressive. There's nothing wrong with that. And he's doing a great job of it. But I think more than ever, even more than when you get a large sample of an NBA regular season or something like that, watching the games does help. Okay, how did they get these points? Here's another example. Caleb Wilson, I think, had 17 points on Monday night. Guess how many free throws he missed, Omari? It was either 5 or 6. You know how many points that is in a Summer League context? It's like 10 or 12 points. So he could have had 30 again if he just makes his free throws, right? So I just think there's a whole lot of context into these small samples of Summer League basketball, which also at times, quite frankly, it isn't great basketball.
Yeah, it's just an inherently chaotic environment. You have all these guys that have never played before, sort of in this, I don't want to say pressure cooker, but everybody's trying to show what they could do to audition themselves. They've only been together for a short period of time. Not all Summer League rosters are built,
Correct.
similarly. There's just a lot of variance in the actual, teammates and skill sets that players are surrounded with. What one player is doing with their team doesn't mean that another player on another team is dealing with the same environment, right? It could be an environment that enhances your skills. It could be an environment that doesn't really showcase what you could do well. I think with Ebuka, you could point out that you didn't really have the quality of, screener or lob threat that you'll have, that he'll have with the Pistons. You don't have the shooters. Teams could defend him, I thought, really, really physically. And, maybe some of those same bumps in the NBA, you get to the line a bit more. But it's really hard to just go off of the pure numbers, I think, for that reason. I looked it up. Cooper Flagg shot 35% in Summer League last year, and then obviously went on to win Rookie of the Year.
People melted down after Victor Wembanyama's, Summer League debut. I was there. I remember exactly where I was standing.
And I remember just hearing the takes. He's too weak. He looks uncomfortable. He's this and that. It's not a regular environment. You do have to kind of take things with a grain of salt. but guys come in, I think, with a track record and history of what they're good and bad at. And I think less than the numbers, it's just process and are they doing things that will help them at the next level? And that's really what it's about.
And what I think the role is also important. Like this is my Malik Thomas point. Malik has been incredible. I had him as a top 30 player, but he's playing a role right now that he's not going to play with the Cleveland Cavaliers during the regular season. A lot of his usage is as a pick and roll ball handler. It's isolation. It's not spot ups and off screens and things like that. So that's all. That's all I'm saying. Doesn't mean it doesn't matter. I'm not saying that either. I don't want to be that guy. As the chat has pointed out, and then Wes, Ron Holland was 46.7% from three last year on 5 attempts per game in Summer League. So let's go to break, and then we'll start with that comment from... I got to stop laughing at the comments whenever people can't see them, because then it just sounds ridiculous. I apologize. We'll start with that comment right after this break.
All right, we're back with segment 3. Going to close the book on Summer League. We still have 2 Summer League games left. And, if anything big happens, then we can always revisit next week. But we're going to get more into the offseason as a whole and roster construction now. So here's a comment from Ben Chulik. What comes first, next Pistons Post episode or Durant's signing? That's a great question.
I thought this was funny. I'm sorry. And then Pistons fan 11 says we should try to make Bryce laugh in comments. That is the new game. No, we will. The podcast. Wes has to redirect me, guys. Like Wes can tell. Wes has been with me for like 200, 300 episodes now. He can tell when the comments are starting to distract me, and then I get real flustered, and then I get nervous that I said something stupid. And so no, the next Pistons. I'm guessing the next Pistons Pulse comment or episode will come first.
Yeah, that would also be my guess, because it seems like with restricted free agency, it's either hammered out pretty soon or in the late stages of the summer. So we'll see. Nothing's changed on the Pistons end. They want Durant back. And then the Karras trade last week actually opened up a bit more cap space, which would allow them to accommodate a slightly bigger contract if need be. And they're still focused on getting him to re-sign and, build around him and Cade and Asar. Trajan said that publicly several times. I think they're saying that just to say that, based on public and private conversations with the team. So wish I could put a timer on it. Wish I could shake the magic 8-ball, but we'll just have to wait and see. But I'm not a gambling man. I already said that. I'm gonna bet on the Pistons Post having a new episode first.
Steven says, thought the Cavs did get a steal with Thomas. I actually agree with that as well. Arthur says, Okorie's role in Summer League will be what his role will be off the bench. I do agree with that. Like, that's why I like what we've seen from Okorie, is I think for him, he is getting a similar context to what it will be during the season. The beauty is light trolling Bryce, though. Yeah, like I fall for it every time. Pistons fan 11, Duran is signing new contract on the next Pistons Pulse, and LeBron Decision 3.0 also on the show. I mean, if Jalen Duran wants to make his announcement or whatever on the Pistons Pulse, we would be happy to welcome that. But I assume that won't happen. We will probably be back a week from now, guys, unless obviously if Jalen Duran signs a contract, we will return earlier. Okay. I want to give a quick rundown because, as you just mentioned, Karis LeVert trade has gone through. The Big 16 trade, which was part of that, all went through. All of this stuff has gone final. And so now we actually know where the Pistons stand in terms of the roster, stuff like that. So, O2, I'm going to run through this, and then I just want you to give me your takeaway. So, the Pistons used $11.3 million of the non-taxpayer mid-level on the Isaiah Joe trade. So, they have $3.7 left of that. Spotrac has them with the biannual, which is $5.47. I don't think that's right, because I thought they used that on Danis Jenkins. I'll have to talk to Keith about that. And then they have a trade exception of just under $5.2 million for Marcus Sasser, and then $15 million for Isaiah Stewart. On the roster, Cade Cunningham, John Collins on an expiring contract, Duncan Robinson on a contract that's still only guaranteed for $2 million and non-guaranteed next year, Isaiah Joe with a club option in 27-28. Asar Thompson obviously has a big contract situation coming up. Kevin Huerter, who's on 2 years guaranteed and then a team option. Ron Holland, obviously, on his rookie deal. Paul Reed, also on a non-guaranteed deal, then will be an unrestricted free agent. Ebuka, Okorie, Danis Jenkins, we've talked about. And then all of Javonte Green, Taurean Prince, Gary Harris are on vet minimum contracts, will be unrestricted free agents next year. Tolu Smith, Chaz Lanier. What just stands out to you as I just go through what they have in terms of trade exceptions, the roster, the contract, obviously Jalen Duren. So the numbers real quick, Omari, you brought that up with Karis LeVert. They are $46 to $48 million under the tax before signing Jalen Duren to a contract. They're hard capped at the first apron, but they're like $55 million from that. So just your thoughts on where things stand.
Yeah. A word that Trajan likes to use is optionality, and they have a lot of optionality. I think the fact that they're able to get Duncan Robinson in a sign and trade 3-year deal from the first year, fully guaranteed, to do the exact same thing this year. Very similar money, very similar structure with John Collins, except the final 2 years are fully not guaranteed. Isaiah Joe, great shooter on a good contract. Kevin Huerter, people are saying, 3 years, $27 billion is too much, or an overpay, or this or that. Kevin Huerter, we've already talked about it on the show. Like, we both think he's a good basketball player and has a chance to really outplay that contract. That also gives you another player where if you do eventually want to go and make some type of move, that gives you a way to do that, and maybe preserve some other guys on the roster. And that is something that kind of matters in the grand scheme, just having that type of tradable salary. I said this last week. It's still true this week. This is a roster that is being intentionally built to maximize flexibility, to be able to have players on contracts that are attractive to other teams if you were to make some type of trade. They have a lot of contracts that they love, but other teams would also love. That is intentionality that points to what they want to do, even if they haven't done it yet.
So I will just give, because this is a point you've brought up multiple times. John Collins is $17 million in expiring at the deadline. Duncan Robinson will be $16 million. Isaiah Joe is technically an expiring contract. Huerter's is the one that's not, but still, by the time the deadline comes around, it would be a year and a half, and then you have the club option. Like, one thing that stands out to me, anytime I go to a team's, I just go to Spot Track and then I click on the multi-year tab, is how much red or how much green you see on the roster. Green means player option. Red means club option, team option. And the Pistons have a lot of red, which, to your point, is the optionality. Now, some of that is just naturally from rookie scale contract situations, or it's like the lighter gray where it means it's non-guaranteed. So a lot of expiring money, just John Collins and Duncan Robinson get you to $33 million. If you add Isaiah Joe, that's $44 million of expiring money. And none of those players are bad basketball players, right? They're all quite good basketball players. I'm not saying you'd want to trade all of them. One thing I also want to mention, I text Keith about this morning in terms of the trade exception, especially that $15 million one. Just want to remind people, they can't take Duncan Robinson's, for example, $16 million, combine it with the $15 million trade exception, and go get a $30 million player. You can't aggregate or combine those two things.
Think of the trade exception like a voucher, or like a Visa gift card. It is what it is on there, and that's it. But it's pretty much a coupon.
But you can still use it in a deal where you're either just bring a player back just in that, or I think the one I was going to try to do, let me see if I can put this together real fast here. So I think you can trade, it doesn't quite work. I was going to try to trade for like Cam Johnson just real quick here. I'm not going to get it to work. So I apologize. I should have put it together. Anyway, you could do something where if you're trading for two players, one of those players could go into the trade exception. It would be a thing where, like, if you could trade Duncan Robinson for Cam Johnson straight up, let's just say it actually doesn't work, but let's just say you did. And then to help with, what you're getting back or not giving up or whatever, you need to take in Zeke Naji also from the Nuggets. Zeke could go into the trade exception while the other part of the trade, Cam Johnson for Duncan Robinson, is executed 1-for-1. So there are ways to use it in a bigger picture trade. It just can't be combined together. You can't add Duncan Robinson or, whoever and the trade exception and go get Trey Murphy. Like, that's not how it works. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure to make that point.
Yeah, for sure. And just from an overall cap standpoint, I think it's been a very cap savvy front office. Like, I think about when they claimed Paul Reed off of waivers and then proceeded to waive him and then sign him to a multi-year, a 2-year deal, I believe. And like he's only making around $5 or $6 billion next year. Just crazy value on that deal. But they do a lot of sort of proactive stuff. So kind of help themselves down the road. I think a lot of that's playing into the Jalen Duren stuff right now. And I'm going to write about this at some point. But I think the Victor Wembanyama deal and the Jaylen Brown trade are two different examples of how teams are solving the second apron. One way to solve it is, your stars take less money. Another way to solve it is your stars on the max contract get traded. And that's kind of the two paths the Pistons, I think, see down the road. Either get them on a contract that allows us to stay optional, or you sign them to a max deal, and then one day you're boxed in, and maybe you have to make a trade that you wouldn't have made had you not had the second apron environment. But yeah, just the way the contracts are structured, they've all been very intentional about this stuff. And you didn't get that quote unquote second guy, but I think they are in way better position to do that now than they were a few months ago, because they have just more salary that they can actually use in those types of deals.
Steven Suggs makes also a great point. Trade exceptions work 3-team deals as well. Absolutely a point I meant to make. And, thank you for bringing that as well. Pistons fan 11, do you think we have enough room under the cap to pay Duren and use the $15 million trade exception? So this is where things get interesting. Spotrac has them at $46 million. If Jalen Duren's salary first year starts at $35 million, the answer there would be no. Now they are over the roster, 15-man roster limit during the regular season. That's not the roster limit in the offseason. But if you just waive, let's say, Gary Harris, that $3 million stays on the books. If they can find a way they could make a trade. They could probably get a way to get under the tax still, but yeah, it would be close. So they are right up against that tax once Duren's number comes in the range of what I think it's going to come in. And I think it's a fair question, Pistons fan 11, because I do think they probably just try to stay under the tax for one more year. The fact that they can means that they should, in my opinion. And I know fans often don't like to hear that, but in my opinion, I think they probably should go ahead and stay under the tax for one more year. And then Michael says, doesn't the TPE go 12 months? So it could be in the next offseason? That is exactly correct. Whatever date that trade was actually gone through, Spotrac has it on the 8th. So that will be available until July 8th of 2027, both the Sasser and the Isaiah Stewart trade exceptions.
Yeah. So there's, again, they tried to solve problems, I think, just reiterating earlier points before they happen. And they are in the window now and they have to pay a SAR at some point too. I think they're just being mindful of, we need money to actually be able to keep these guys and not box ourselves in.
Yeah, you want to avoid the repeater tax as much as possible, as Pistons fan 11 says. Okay, last thing, and then we'll get out of here. O2. I'm just going to lay out the roster for you, and I want to get your just give me one takeaway, all right, as I go through this. I want to be very clear. This is not what I think the 10-man rotation is or the depth chart or whatever. I'm going to organize it so I think it simplifies it for everybody. So at point guard, you have Cade Cunningham, Danius Jenkins, Ebuka Okorie. Off-ball guard, you have Duncan Robinson, Isaiah Joe, Chaz Lanier. At the 3, you have Asar Thompson, Kevin Huerter, and Taurean Prince. At the 4, you have John Collins, Ron Holland, Javonte Green. At center, you have Jalen Duren, Paul Reed, Tolu Smith, and then you do also have Gary Harris as a part of this team right now. 16 players. I'm assuming that Jalen Duren comes back. Any takeaways as I just lay that out in that way of and I know those guys have position versatility and all of that. I understand all of that, but I just thought that was the easiest way to visualize it. Anything that stands out to you in a positive or negative way?
Yeah, the biggest positive, I think, is just more shooting. Isaiah Joe, career 40% shooter. Taurean Prince, I think he's around career like 38 or 39. And his last 2 seasons, he's shooting like 44. Which is insane. Gary Harris, great shooter throughout his career. That was a big priority, was just to round out the shooting on this roster. John Collins, I think last 2 seasons, he's shooting around 40%. This roster shoots the 3-ball way better already than they did last year. I read about this within the last few days, but they were like around 20th in 3-point percentage last year. They were 29th in 3-point volume. Next season, their volume is going to go up and their accuracy they should go up. I won't say that they will. They should go up. They have fundamentally, I think, changed this offense in that you could essentially have 40% shooters on the floor at any given time. And you're adding that to already having Duncan Robinson last season, who was really the only guy who could get threes at that percentage and at the level of volume that you want for players in that archetype. And you could throw Chaz Lanier in there too, because I think, him coming into year 2, I wrote about him a couple times this weekend. They spoke so highly of him last year as far as his readiness, about just how advanced he was at reading the offense, finding those soft pockets to get shots off. There's a lot of shooting. I think there's a lot of flexibility and being able to get shooting on the floor from the 2 through 4 positions. And that should open things up a lot next season in the way that they weren't able to do last year.
Yeah. I mean, downtown Deuce. So we had a question about Dana Jenkins earlier, and then Deuce asked, who's you guys gut feeling opening night starting shooting guard? I think we're going to save that. I think we'll save that for another episode, because I think that could almost be an episode on its own. Just going through all of those options. Guys, I see a lot of the Ron Holland at the 4. I was just trying to make it easier to visualize. I'm not saying Ron Holland is the backup 4. I mean, he might be right now. I realize you would want him to play the 3, if we're doing this. It just was the easiest way to go through it for me to visualize it. Just, I want to be clear here.
Ron as a 4 on this roster and not as a player, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure people don't think he's 100% at the 4 or something like that. He might play more at the 4 than what people realize if you just look at Basketball Reference. But anyway, I think the floor spacing is a really good call, Omari. They have really, it wasn't just Isaiah Joe and keeping Duncan Robinson. Then it was also bringing in Taurean Prince. So I like that a lot. Now to the Ron Holland at the 4 question or comments or whatever, I still have some worries about the front court. We'll see if there's any sort of moves either going into the season or anything like that to, change that or help with that or whatever. So I just thought it'd be fun. I thought it'd be good to go through now that everything was finalized to just outline where are the trade exceptions, where's the cap space, where's the tax line, what is on the roster. And I think they have 1 2-way spot open, Omari, right? On Yinso and...
Yeah, they still have...
No, it has Elijah Harkless on a 2-way. So all
Elijah
the 2-ways
Harkless and then Isaac Jones.
Okay.
Yeah, so I believe that they're occupied.
So I missed the Elijah Harkless acquisition, I guess, at some point. So.
Yeah, that became official late last week. I forget the exact day. Do you have any thoughts on Elijah Harkless, type of player he is?
I do not. I've said this before. I learned long ago not to pretend that I knew about something I didn't know about. And so I am not going to try to pretend to be able to talk very well on Elijah Harkless right now. I don't have a whole lot of notes, so I will refrain until I can give some real context and analysis.
All right, cool. Anything we haven't touched on? I think the other takeaway from the depth chart really is outside of Ebuka, and if you wanted to take a guy that has a chance to impact the team as a ball handler, as a rookie, he was probably one of the top options in this draft just as far as this raw, pure ball handler. And then you have Dennis as real. How do you feel about their ball handling situation and those 3 guys essentially being the point guards on the roster?
Yeah, I feel good about Danish Jenkins. I feel like all of a sudden I was the one that was super high on him, and then I was a little bit lower than some, and then now I feel like I'm higher on him than most now. And then here's what I think. I'm higher than Wes, apparently. Is that what the hand was, Wes? That I'm higher on Danis than you? Oh, no, you're higher on him also. Got it. Perfect. I think Ebuka can take some real ball handling responsibilities in the regular season. I don't know about in the playoffs as a rookie. That's just that's really, really difficult to do. But I believe in Ebuka Okorie 10 to 15 minutes a night in the regular season doing some ball handling for this team off the bench.
Yeah, I think, that's the question is to what extent would you have to lean on Okorie, knowing that you have Cade, knowing you have Danis, knowing that they trusted Danis enough to play him as a starter in the playoffs. And, he's a guy that's just really played himself into this conversation on a bigger level. But you did need at least one more guy who could do it. I thought last year it really was just Cade and Danis. And now you have Cade, Danis, and Okorie. So maybe you didn't add a vet to that group. But if Cade's going to have the ball for 37 minutes anyway, maybe you're fine, right? And then you've still got, I think AT, who could do some secondary stuff. You've got guys who can still create and do some of the auxiliary aspects. So there's just a question mark there just because the third guy is a rookie, but at least on paper, they did address that. The question is just, does Ebuka help more this year, or is it worse of a year two thing for him?
I mean, the other thing, Omari, is if you're going to pay Jalen Duren $35 to $40 million a year, you're paying him that money because he's going to take some on-ball responsibilities, which we did see in the regular season last year. It's obviously a very, very different context than what Cade does or Ebuka does or Danis does or whatever.
But he is a willing passer.
Yeah, he's a good passer. Like 100%. I'm just saying, like, he's going to take some real usage, and you have to get that from him if you're going to pay him $35. You can't pay Jalen Duren $35-40 million and not be expecting him to use him in a role similar to what we saw last regular season. Yeah,
and that's basically it. Like we've always, I think, been pretty high on Duren's passing. I thought we saw a bit less of it last year. I think some of that was just role. He did a lot more self-creating, and like it was a really big part of the offense. I mean, he was 65% from the floor with some self-creation mixed in. So you probably don't need him to pass too much if he's going to be that efficient. But that is, I think, a big growth area for him. I think he's shown that he could find bigs underneath. He could kick it out. He's 22. There's, especially as he just has the ball more, became a little bit more of a face-up guy last year, taking bigs off the dribble. Yeah, that's worth talking about. Absolutely. You can't leave him out of that conversation. If you're paying him, you're going to put the ball in his hands. And he's shown that he can do some of that stuff already. So maybe that ends up being more impactful than we could currently predict at this point.
All right. I thought we were going to record this in 30 minutes whenever we talked about Las Vegas, Summer League, and food and other stuff for 15. I knew that wasn't going to be the case. An hour and 10 was not something I expected us to do, but I think it was good conversation. Hopefully all of you enjoyed it. Again, thank you so much to the chat. Like, seriously, we appreciate you so much. The comments, you guys are super respectful. The opinions, the questions, everything you guys provide to the episode. I was telling someone the other day that I don't know how we could do an episode without the live comments and conversation, because it makes everything about the episode better. So thank you very much. Listen, we're true off season now. This is kind of it. I know we'll have 2 Summer League games, so there's a little bit to talk about. We can't do too much roster rotation stuff in July because that's what we do in September and October. But we will do the best we can. We'll probably take a little bit of a break in August whenever I start school back up and regular season football and off-season O is in full form. But thank you so much to all of you. And we will be back next week, about a week from now. So, O2, take it away, my guy.
Yeah, we'll definitely be back next week. Me and Bryce were actually kind of talking during Summer League. Like, we're lucky to have a great comment section. And it's funny. Yeah. A lot of pods don't have a great comment section.
They do not. Or it's very, very aggressively negative. Not like, hey, let's troll Bryce and kind of joke him. It's like very aggressive negative.
It's funny because when we first started doing this pod, we had no video aspect at all, not even behind the scenes. We're just audio only. And then we started recording with video. And then we started going live maybe, a year or a year and a half into doing the pod. It's kind of funny looking back now. Like, I don't even know how we did that. It's like talking to a wall. Not like talking to a wall, but it's adjacent to that. It's much better having an audience and actually being able to look at my guy here and see if he's laughing or what's going on.
Truly, it was, I couldn't do it. I would struggle not knowing whether, because you read body language, it's like, oh, O2's ready to say something. I need to wrap this up and shut up real fast. You know what I mean? And so it helped.
Yeah. And then obviously it's always great when we can do it in person as well, like we did last week. Bryce is a wall confirmed. Can't confirm or deny. So with that, I'll go ahead and close this out. Big thanks to our audio producer, Robin Chan, our editor-in-chief, Nicole Avery Nichols. A big shout out to West Davenport, and we'll talk to you all next week.